do in neighborhood code enforcement is we enforce codes.
Can I have that for you?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. We enforce codes on existing homes to help make safer neighborhoods and keep neighborhoods looking attractive. Okay. So right now, one of our most important codes that we enforce is overgrowth. So right now, we're just covered up with overgrowth. All right. So if people say let their yards go taller than 10 inches, it's considered overgrowth. Shrubs are a little bit more vague, but you may have overgrown shrubs and things like that you might see. If you have a problem in your neighborhood regarding any of the codes that we enforce, you can call 311, and then they'll open a case on it, and within 3 days, one of our inspectors will come out and take a look. Okay? So, if, for example, you call in a complaint about overgrowth or litter, because we also handle litter, but litter is really anything that just doesn't belong. So if you have a couch on someone's front porch, that's considered litter because it doesn't really belong there, right? Anytime you see more furniture that may be outside, it's litter, or of course it can be just regular garbage, junk, anything that you might run across. And it doesn't have to be in your neighborhood. It can be anywhere within the city limits of Chattanooga. And we also handle housing issues. And housing issues might include something like peeling paint. It may be something more serious like structural issues with the building. Or sometimes tenants will call us because maybe a landlord won't fix something. And it's a safety issue, and so we can come in then and check for code violations, and then we can enforce, the compliance, hopefully. So basically how we work is, if you call in to 311 to complain about an issue anywhere within the city limits, if it is, say, litter or overgrowth, then our inspector will come out within 3 days and take photographs and document any and all code violations that they observe. And from there, then they will try to contact the property owner. The property owner will have 10 days to bring the property into compliance if it's litter or overgrowth or, say, graffiti or something like that. At that point, if it's not brought into compliance, then they are actually cited to court, and they may have to pay a fine and court costs and things like that, and then the judge might order them to correct the violation. If they still won't correct the violation, or if they won't show up for court or whatever, then the city of Chattanooga can abate the violation in many cases. If it's overgrowth, if it's litter, if it's graffiti, the city of Chattanooga can come in and abate the violation. Now, sometimes people call in and say about overgrowth, like say if you called in this week and you said, hey, there's an overgrown property, and then you're wondering what we're doing, because if we don't get cooperation from the owner, then it might actually take us 30 days to get that yard mowed. And the reason is because of giving the owner 10 days and then having to send another letter out citing them to court, and then seeing that they don't show up to court, and then the judge says, okay, fine, you have permission to enter that property and go ahead and abate the situation. And of course, at that point, we would assign one of our vendors to mow the lawn, trim the shrubs, whatever needs to be done. So it does take time. But if you do call in to 311 with a complaint, they can give you a case number. And so if you want to follow up and check on it later, a week or two later, you can call in, and 311 can look in the computer system and tell you exactly where we are in the process of getting the situation corrected. Okay? Right now, the city has started a new graffiti initiative, and so since there is a lot of graffiti in many areas of Chattanooga, especially downtown, Peter Murphy he came up with an idea that where the city would actually come on to someone's property with their permission and paint over graffiti. And they'll do this free. And so, let's say if there's a property, and there may even be, like, perhaps there's a boarded up house that someone is not yet working on or something like that might have graffiti, and the owner is not dealing with it, then they could sign a form. I brought a few forms tonight just in case anybody should happen to want one. They can sign a form, and for a year, anytime that property is tagged with graffiti, then the city can come onto the property and they will try to match the paint. It may not match perfectly, but they will try to match the paint, and they'll paint over the graffiti.
Do you have that in an electronic form we can put on the website, maybe?
Yes, I can email that to you.
That'd be great, thank you.
Yeah, and we've got a little poster too that just kind of explains how it works. So, if you have a property that's tagged with graffiti, even if it says stop sign in your neighborhood that's tagged with graffiti, if you'll call it into 311, then we can come and do something about it. If it's, say, a stop sign or city property, something like that, of course the city will come out and correct it just as soon as we can get someone here.
Donna, what about this commercial property?
Okay, if it is commercial property, I was at the Times Free Press today, in fact. If it is commercial property, then we will offer them this form to offer to paint over it for them free. And if they don't want to do that, then they will have 10 days to paint over it themselves. And if they don't do that, then we will cite them to court, just like we would with any other code violation, even though they're actually a victim of a crime. But our objective is to get the graffiti cleaned up and covered up as quickly as possible and keep it clean.
So the thing is called 311.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it
And the
is.
same thing, I guess, for residential properties that seem to have some, like,
Yes.
okay.
For residential property, yeah. For residential property on graffiti, just call 311. And if it's,
That alleyway that we were talking about.
yeah, a lot of times.
Well, we've got an alleyway, and it's like every house on there has been tagged with some gang graffiti, because
Yeah.
it's on private property, so normally I'd go out and paint over it, but on private property,
Right. And with the city, and of course, if they don't sign the voluntary form and if they still want paint over it, then we'll have to go through court and get the judge to give us permission to enter the property, and we'll still paint over it. But
Okay.
there again, it might take 30 days
Okay.
to handle.
Okay.
Unfortunately, sometimes we get in situations where maybe a house is in such terrible condition that, and the owner won't do anything about it, that occasionally, we do end up taking a house to demolition court if it's a dangerous situation. But we try to work with anyone that is willing to work with us on trying to correct those issues. So we tear houses down too. We try to avoid historic districts like Highland Park. But the majority of the houses that we have torn down lately have been, a lot of them were houses that were hit by the storm and had trees that actually came through the roof, and maybe the homeowners did not have insurance or something like that, and they just basically abandoned the properties. So we took 14 houses through demolition court last month, and I think about 10 of those were storm damaged properties, and then the other ones were just abandoned houses that were open, that basically vagrants were coming in and using and things like that. So, but we do that. We every other month we have demolition hearings, and we take probably 10 to 15 houses every other month in that way. So, are there any questions? Yes.
We have a house at the end of our street that has an orange sign on it, which I think means that they're supposed to be doing some work.
Yeah,
The
that should
sign's
be
been
the
up for 2 years, and there's no work done on the house. Is that a code?
Okay, a building permit usually lasts for about a year. Is that right, Kevin, down here? Okay, yeah, for about a year, and then it would expire. And so then if they have not done work on the house, and if the house is in poor condition, or if it needs work done to it, then see, that is something that we can send them a notice of code violations about, and then if they don't correct it, of course, then we can take them to court and try to force them to correct it. Sometimes people will get a building permit to get us off their backs, because at the point that they get a building permit and they go before the judge and they say, hey, we just got a permit and we're about to take this rotten porch off this house and build a new porch on there, then the judge will normally give them time to do that. And so sometimes the whole thing gets dropped at that point. So that is one way that sometimes houses get fall between the cracks. I know you have a couple of houses in Highland Park that I've seen that have some issues as far as structural repairs that need to be made. Yeah. And that is one thing with us. So if the house is not in such horrible condition that it needs to be demolished, and we cite the individual to court repeatedly to try to gain compliance, and they just ignore us, then in some ways we are limited. This last month, we go to court every Thursday for things like that, and I know we had an issue in a different neighborhood where an issue had gone on for quite some time, and we ended up citing the family, citing the owner every day in order to try to get their attention. So it was because our citations are only $50. So they were cited every day to try to get them in court and then charge them their costs. So at the point that it hit about $600, they actually showed up for court today. And so now they're trying to bring the property into compliance and get some of those fees reduced. And of course, as far as fines are concerned, if people don't voluntarily pay, it is put as a lien on the deed. So, sometimes we have problems too with foreclosed properties because a lot of times the bank, they own properties, they won't necessarily keep things in order. So.
I'm just, this might be a crazy question, but there is a house on Duncan in the corner of Hospital that I cannot believe it still stands. It's like, and then all the, and people live in it.
Yeah.
It is absolutely amazing that still stands up and that, I was thinking, pictures of it. I took a picture of it, put it on Facebook.
Yeah, and
Let's see.
Duncan and Holt's Club. Okay. I'll go take a look at it.
It is amazing. It's almost like something out of Ghost Town.
It makes, when I look at it, I feel like I'm falling over.
Yeah.
It's like that. The doors are like this, and the
We'll do it later. We'll take a second.
and the whole
Second series.
everything is like this. It looks like a
Sides by
puzzle
the-
that has not been put right together.
Well, we can take a look at it and see if there's anything that we can help them do to get it.
I think it's owner occupied.
Yeah,
It is not. I think it's owner occupied.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's 13, down at 1300 Duncan,
1300 down.
and Doris Farm has had,
Doris. Okay, yeah.
I mean, we like to work with the family, the elderly, but it's not a safe structure. And so somebody really needs to intervene.
Yeah. I'll talk to Doris about it. And I'll go back and take a look.
Somebody needs to come back out and really take a good look at it because it is not safe.
Yeah, I'd say that it's probably not. It sounds like it's not safe. In a case like that, where say the owners are living there, we don't like to condemn properties and displace people. Because we can only offer maybe short-term housing solutions. So we can try to work with, especially if they're elderly world changers or groups like that.
It's more than that.
Okay.
It's not a case for world changers. It's beyond.
Maybe we can get some volunteers from Habitat or something. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see if there's something that we can do about it. Yeah, because we don't want to take them out of their homes and we like them to stay. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you.